our next blank canvas online. Today we're going to start with something just a little bit different. It's something we were doing when we were meeting in person and we didn't transition across when we started doing blank canvas online. We're going to begin this video and our videos to come with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the land I and many of you are on. We pay respect to their leaders, past, present, and emerging. And we pray that we would work together for reconciliation, justice, and a brighter future. So I had a theme in my head for blank canvas for probably a week or so. And then the world kind of changed. I'm not talking COVID this time, I'm talking Black Lives Matter, police brutality, and deaths in custody in America and here in Australia. I was really torn. Do I change my theme or do I keep it the same? I'm a really strong believer that in our faith and in our churches, we should talk about what's happening in the world. That our faith needs to shape and impact how we interact in the world. And that what happens in the world needs to shape and impact our faith. So I decided to do both. Both my old theme and my new theme relate to this book. Well, this collection of books. If you can't see what book it is, it's the Bible. It might seem strange to be talking about a book that's thousands of years old. What on earth can it say to us about what's happening in the world right now? But the thing is, this isn't a regular book. I mean, it looks a bit like one. When I look at it, when I pick it up, when I put it down, when I open it, when I close it. Nothing all that special seems to happen. I have multiple versions of this book as well, and they don't seem to look or do anything special either. Even when others hold it, the Bible doesn't seem to do anything special. Maybe because what's special about this book only happens when we read it or we listen to it. Maybe it's special when we realize this is the closest thing everybody has to know who God is. You've probably heard me say before, if we want to know who God is, then let's look at the closest example we have, and that's Jesus. I can probably go a step further today. If we want to know who Jesus is, the place to find out is the Bible. This book in different forms has been read for thousands of years. The Old Testament, the beginning half of this book, was probably actually read by Jesus. Well, not this exact book. This one's only a couple of years old. This book, when it's been read, has impacted Christianity all over the world. What is contained within this book has changed the world. There is power in this book when we read it and when we listen to it. It's more than just a verse here and a verse there. It's a big, epic story. A story of the world beginning. A story of God interacting with humanity. A story of humanity trying to figure out the world and God. A story of God coming to earth as Jesus. A story of Jesus' love, compassion, and justice for the world. A story of acceptance and sacrifice for each of us. A story of humanity figuring out a way forward after Jesus. It's interesting though that such an important book can be read in so many different ways. What I hear in the Bible is a story of love and acceptance for everyone. God's heart for justice. God's hope that we will stand up for the pushed down and the oppressed. God's call for us to love the world like God loved the world. So what I hear when I read the Bible is God calling me and calling us to stand up for Black Lives Matter. God calling us to stand up for Indigenous rights. God calling us to stand up for LGBTIQA plus rights. God calling us to stand up for refugees. God calling us to do something about climate change. But not everybody hears that. Not everybody hears the Bible's call for justice. And not everybody hears the same call for justice. William Wilberforce heard the call for justice in the Bible when he advocated for the end of the slave trade in the late early 1800s. Martin Luther King heard the call for justice in the Bible when he led the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. The Uniting Church hears the call for justice in the Bible as they work with Indigenous Australians and work together for justice and for treaty. Christians across the world hear the call for justice in the Bible as they advocate for better work and stronger policy on climate change. Those calls of justice have been heard through reading the Bible. While the Bible may have been written thousands of years ago, when we read it, when we listen to it, when we try to understand it, we can see that it still speaks into our world today. The situations may not be exactly the same, but it does speak about standing up for the oppressed and the pushed down. It does speak about love and acceptance for all people. It does speak about the beauty and responsibility of the created world. It calls us in ways to not just speak about these things, but to act on them. Not just because it's the right thing, but because it's part of our faith. Because it's part of what being a Christian is. Matthew 25:35-40 says, "I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was homeless and you gave me a room. I was shivering and you gave me clothes. I was sick and you stopped to visit. I was in prison and you came to me." Then those people are going to say, "Master, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you? Thirsty and give you a drink? And when did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And then the king will say, "I'm telling the truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me." Being a Christian means more than reading a book. Being a Christian means action. Being a Christian means living out what you believe. The Bible, when I'm just holding it, just looks like another book. But when we open it, when we read it, when we listen to it, it becomes so much more than an ordinary book. It's something that shapes and impacts our faith, something that challenges and encourages us, something that speaks into our current world, something that drives us into action. Going forward from this video, I want us to journey together to see what the Bible has to say, what it has to say to us, what it has to say to our faith, what it has to say to the world. I hope that we will keep exploring it together, talking through the confusing or hard parts, helping each other understand it, and seeing how it can shape our lives and our world. For our creative activity today, we are going to look at lettering, the art of words and letters, how we draw them, how we colour them, how we arrange them. This is something I really love, I felt like maybe it was applicable for our theme today. Knowing how to create and put together Bible verses, quotes, statements, or protest signs can be helpful. The way we use words, not just saying them, but also writing them matters. The way we are creative with fonts and sizes, colours and shapes can all help make our point clearer and easier to understand. So we're going to attempt to be creative with words. We're going to look at a couple of different ways we can do lettering. The first way is to trace letters. I often do this by finding a font on my computer, adjusting the size, and printing it. You can pop your printed sheet of paper on a light box or a bright window, put a plain piece of paper on top, and trace it. If you use a window, you might need a little bit of tape to keep your paper still. Another option is just to up the brightness on your computer or your tablet, pop a piece of paper on top, and trace the letters. Another way is to copy a font. So I'm using the same font on my computer, but this time I'm using texters and seeing if I can replicate it on my paper. Now it's not going to look exactly the same, but that's okay. It's going to have a bit more of a hand-drawn feel to it. You can also do this when you look at other sorts of lettering online, when you can copy the other lines and shapes and patterns that go along with them. Another option is to come up with your own fonts. I have two fonts that I draw a lot that I'm going to show you how to do. But first up, a few things to consider before you start drawing your own fonts. Use your ruler to draw up some lines on your page so that you can write straight or round or whatever shape you want. If you're using capitals and lowercase letters, make sure you draw another line so you know how tall to do your lowercase letters. I often like to lightly sketch out my letters in a pencil before trying to use pen. So this is the first one of my fonts. It's one I came up with in high school, and it's pretty much just adding triangles to the end of letters. So draw your letters and pop a triangle on each of the endpoints. You might even like to colour them in afterwards. The second font I do a lot is block letters. So I'm going to sketch out a slightly different shape this time. You can probably notice I'm doing kind of a circle. I've got a line for the top of my letters and the bottom of my letters. Now, block letters seem really easy until you try to do them. I would suggest that you sketch out the basic shape of the letters before you even start trying to add any thickness to them. I often like to write the word small down in a corner so I can figure out where the middle point is, so I can make sure that my words look balanced afterwards. Once you have your sketched out letters, you're then going to kind of add a box around them to create thickness to your letters. Make sure you do this lightly because you might want to erase some of your lines after. After you've done this, it's time to go over with a pen or a texter. With this one, I've got a bit of space in the middle, so I'm going to add some other shapes and some other patterns. And then you can always add some colour to it if you like as well. The last part of lettering we're going to look at is adding shadow. I often do this when I draw block letters, but I'm going to do it a slightly different way today so you get a clearer idea of how you draw a shadow. The hardest part of a shadow is knowing where to put it on all the different letters. So I've printed off some block letters from my computer, put them on my light box and traced around them. Now, leaving the light box on, I'm going to shift my paper. I'm moving my bottom piece down and to the left just a little. From here, I'm now going to trace the extra parts of the letters. I've chosen to use a thinner pen so I can tell the difference. So now you can see we've got a drop shadow. You can then colour in your shadow, or what I like to do is I like to add some lines to it to make it look a little bit interesting. Those are just some basics of lettering, but they really help you be able to create lots of different things. I would suggest for more inspiration is to have a play around on your computer or your device. Maybe have a look online, see what other people have done. So now it's your turn to be creative. Think of a Bible verse, a quote, a statement, a social justice slogan, something that means something to you. Use one of our ways of lettering to write it down. You might choose fonts that relate to your theme. You might use different sizes to emphasize different words. You might use colours to help reinforce the idea. It's really up to you about how you want to be creative with your words. And for the last part of Blank Canvas, we have some reflection questions. What makes you want to or not want to read the Bible? What are some reasons you think people do or don't get involved in social justice issues? Should this be different for Christians? What are some ways you or Blank Canvas could be more active in social justice? Reading the Bible, we can sometimes be challenged. Finding out new information about social justice in the world, we can sometimes be challenged. When we're challenged, we can feel a little uncomfortable. How do we deal with feeling uncomfortable? Thanks so much for joining us for Blank Canvas Online, and we hope you'll come and join us again soon.